Salam sejahtera, dan salam sehat. Kali ini kita akan menghadirkan video Kuliah Umum Profesor Luciana Duranti dengan topik Mengapa Saya Menjadi Arsiparis. Materi kuliah umum ini sangat menarik dan diharapkan bermanfaat bagi siapa saja yang bergelut di dunia kearsipan. Mohon maaf, karena terlalu panjang, dan setelah melalui editing, maka video ini dibagi menjadi 3 bagian. Sebelum dimulai, berikut ini, riwayat singkat Profesor Luciana Duranti. Luciana Duranti adalah ahli teori arsip, dan Profesor Ilmu Kearsipan dan Diplomatika, di School of Library, Archival and Information Studies, University of British Columbia, di Vancouver, Kanada. Beliau adalah ahli di bidang diplomatika dan arsip elektronik. Sejak tahun 1998, beliau menjadi Direktur Proyek Penelitian Arsip Elektronik Interpares. Profesor Duranti telah menerbitkan beberapa karya di bidang diplomatika, kearsipan dan teori kearsipan. Beliau telah mempresentasikan teori dan penelitiannya di banyak konferensi dan simposium di seluruh dunia. Demikian, perkenalan singkat Profesor Luciana Duranti. Mari kita simak bagian pertama kuliah umum Profesor Luciana Duranti ini.
Thank you very much for your introduction. Well, hello everybody. Dear students, professors, administrators, I would like to start by congratulating you on this 10th anniversary and by wishing you a very fulfilling and exciting new academic year. When I was invited to deliver this opening lecture, I was asked to talk about the choices that I made, which contributed to build my career. So this is a very personal story. And to compare them to the choices that you will be confronted with when entering the archival profession. Unfortunately, I do not speak your language, so I will speak English. But note that in this talk, I will use the terms document and record interchangeably to refer to any document made or received in the course of activity and kept for action or reference. So now I will open my PowerPoint. I was asked to say why I became an archivist and why will you become an archivist or should you become an archivist? You, the students, of course, the primary public I am addressing today is the students. So I decided to start with actually those phrases that are stuck in my memory and shaped me. When I went to the professor who was my supervisor for my thesis in the history degree, Professor Emilia Morelli, and I said, I would like to continue graduate studies in history. She said, you are too brilliant to be an historian. And then she explained it. Historians discover the sources of the past and interpret them. Archivists acquire and preserve the documentary sources to be discovered and enable the people to access and understand them. So I started the archival program, and the chair of the program, the director, was Professor Leopoldo Sandri, who in 1950 used to be the National Archivist of Italy. And he gave the very first address to the International Council on Archives. In that address, he said, the sources of history are protected in the office creating them. So when he started teaching us, the first thing he said was, your work is not just preserving what exists, but ensuring that documentary evidence of actions and events will exist. So I graduated, and then I won the national competition for state archivist, and I went to work as a state archivist in the State Archives of Rome. The director of the State Archives of Rome at the time was Professor Elio Lodolini. I started there in 1978. The first day of work, he called me in his office and he said, "If I catch you reading the documents, you are in big trouble." What did he mean? Well, he meant to say, you are educated as an archivist. You don't need to read the documents to identify them at first glance, because you should be able to do so on the basis of your understanding of the form of documents, of the type of script, of the watermarks, of anything that is external to the record and is not its content. In the meanwhile, the principles that were really instilled in me, both by my education and by exercise in the profession, were in fact the ones articulated by Sir Hilary Jenkinson in 1948. He stated that the archivist must be objective, which means not follow his or her own interest, must be impartial, that is, not serve a party over another, and must be professional, that is, must follow established theory and methods. So why did I actually give in? Why did I accept the suggestion of my professor and then continued on that career? Well, I wanted to be in a service profession. I understood that documents are the most reliable sources of facts and actions because they are created as a means for carrying out activity. So they're not the purpose of such activity. They are an instrument. They are a byproduct. And because of this reason, they're natural because they're not the intended outcome of an action. They're authentic with respect to the person or office that makes or receives them. Why? Even if a document is a forgery, if the office that receives it believes it to be true and uses it in the usual and ordinary course of business, that document is authentic with respect to such business. So you see, all archival documents are authentic and archivists are supposed to keep them so. They are interrelated to all the documents participating in the same activity. They are impartial with respect to the questions asked by future researchers. Of course, the content of every record is partial because it is the point of view of the creator. But at the same time, it is not trying to answer the questions that researchers in the future will ask. And that's why they are the most trustworthy source. They're also unique in that identical documents in different contexts have a different meaning. So the reason why I say this is that what I wanted to be was the guardian of documentary evidence, which means ensuring that these characteristics that I just listed are permanently preserved and that future generations will be able to hold the past accountable for its actions by making the archival material accessible in context. And then I moved to Canada. So there I was a professor at the University of Rome. I taught all the traditional courses that are taught in archival science. And when I moved to Canada, the department head asked me, "What do you want to teach?" And I said, well, the usual arrangement and description, access and retrieval, preservation, history of archives, whatever. And the department head said, "This is what you will teach: records management, diplomatics, appraisal for selection and acquisition." And I said, "But I do not know really how to teach these things." And then it all came back to me, the why I was in the archival profession. You remember the words of Professor Sandri? The sources of history are protected in the office of creation. How to create the right records at the right time in the right way and how to keep them so that they can be used as evidence. That's what records management is. And then protecting the characteristics of the records, that's what I wanted to do. Authenticity among them, assessing the identity and integrity of the records over time. And what's that? Diplomatics. Holding the past accountable for its actions. Appraisal will determine that. What we select for the future, what we decide to keep for the future to scrutinize the past. So this was indeed what I had prepared myself for, and I understood it for the first time when I was asked to teach those things. But then digital records happened. You know, in the archival field, nothing stays still because archives are part of life. They're part of everyday life, of everybody's life. So I asked myself, is all I prepared for still valid in the digital environment? How can I ensure the creation and maintenance of accurate, reliable, and authentic records when it is so easy to manipulate and to lose them? So I decided to start my very first research project on reliable record keeping, which was funded by the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada. About a month later, 3 guys show up in uniform from the US Department of Defense. And they were from the Navy and the Army and the Air Force. And I said, we need you to help us to design a record-making, a record-keeping system that we can trust. And I said, no, I'm not working with anybody. I got my money to do my theoretical research. I don't want to build anything. And they answered, well, you understand, we want to demonstrate that your theoretical research works in real life. If you tell us what to do, we can do everything. Well, that bought me. So I did. And together, we examined digital material on the basis of diplomatics and archival theory. And at the same time, they modeled the ideal system of record making and record keeping based on that theory. The outcome was the Department of Defense 5015.2 standard for record keeping, which was issued in 1997 and is still today the US federal standard for all the federal offices. And it is also the foundation of the ISO standard of record keeping and of all world standard. So just the way I was taught. You remember? The sources of history are protected in the Office of Creation. Archivists allow for governments to be held accountable.